Who were the best players at every position during the 2020 NFL season? In this video, I pick my 2020 NFL All-Pro team. The best players from the 2020 NFL season across the board, offensively, defensively. I give you my personal bottom line view All-Pro team. How this works, not necessarily ranking who the best players I feel are at every position, but the players who had the best season in 2020, the regular season. Postseason doesn't count when it comes to All-Pro or postseason awards. Also, I stuck to the position. So the traditional left tackle, right tackle rule stands. If you are a left guard, you have to be picked to be the left guard on the All-Pro team. You can't play right guard on the Bottom Line View All-Pro team. There are a few categories that I use to differentiate between players and ultimately decide who makes the Bottom Line View All-Pro team. The first one is value. How valuable are you to your team? What is that player asked to do on a given down every game? How big of a part do they play in that team's success? And how much impact do they have on a game each and every week? The second thing that I factor in is the production of that player. Statistical performance, grading, consistency, and also availability. So if one player was just as good as the other, but maybe played all of the games while the other played like 12, then I'll go with the guy that played 16, because that's what we're basing it on this season. This season's performance. Before I give you my All-Pro team for this season, make sure you do spike that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more NFL content just like this. Also, make sure you get in that comment section and let me know who you think should be on the Bottom Line View All-Pro team, or who is on your All-Pro team for 2020. Remember, guys, don't factor in postseason and stick within the lines and give me your All-Pro team. Let's kick off the Bottom Line View All-Pro team at the quarterback position. I think it's got to go to Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is most likely going to take home the Most Valuable Player award, and for good reason. I think the absolutely phenomenal thing about Aaron Rodgers is that I thought the Packers were going to regress this season. I thought the Packers, not necessarily Rodgers, but the Packers would be an overall worse team in 2020 than they were in 2019. And I was wrong, guys. I was wrong. Because Aaron Rodgers elevated his level of play from really good to back being maybe the best quarterback and player in football, and maybe the most valuable player in football. I think what Rodgers was able to do was take the system from his first season and jump into that second season with a better recognition of the way that LaFleur calls his plays, getting an understanding of his players and how the system fits around them, and just overall executing at a higher level. I also feel that Aaron Rodgers was one of these quarterbacks that was able to take advantage of the whole COVID NFL season because of what he does at the line of scrimmage and how effective he is at drawing defenders offside and kind of manipulating them on that side of the football. That is something that you have to keep in mind. But overall, Rodgers just looked like his prime self. Incredible season, elevated everybody around him, and I would certainly give him the quarterback spot because I think he does more with less in comparison to a guy like Patrick Mahomes. So I'll take Aaron Rodgers as my All-Pro vote for the quarterback position. My All-Pro running back for the 2020 NFL season is the lone guy that rushed for 2,000 yards. Sometimes we just go with the simple pick. I'm not even the biggest Derrick Henry guy, but even I have to admit that when a running back runs for 2,000 yards, they have to get an All-Pro vote. Like, I don't care that I personally might like Dalvin Cook's style more, or I feel like Derrick Henry doesn't catch the ball enough to be my personal favorite like Alvin Kamara. But it's Derrick Henry. This guy is the show for Tennessee. As much as people want to tell you that it's about Brown and Davis and Tannehill and the play action, Derrick Henry's the guy that every defense come playoff time is trying to stop. And Derrick Henry is the guy that is the engine, the energy for this football team. And he's spectacular. He's one of the true specimens at the running back position that we have ever seen in the history of football. And he is my All-Pro for 2020. The number one wide receiver on my All-Pro 2020 team is Tyreek Hill. Now, there is some debate to who is the greatest wide receiver in the game today, but to me, there is no debate because Tyreek Hill has the single biggest impact of any wide receiver each and every week, each and every game plan for opposing defensive coordinators, and that's what it's all about. Which wide receiver makes you pay the most? Which wide receiver keeps a defensive coordinator up at night with nightmares, sweats? That's Tyreek Hill. What he can do from a deep ball perspective, what he can do from a yak perspective, what he can do from simply taking a jet sweep for a big play or a screen for a big play. Tyreek Hill is so good at certain aspects of football, like beating you deep or catching the football and running after the catch, that people forget how good he is as a route runner, how he separates from coverage, how he's always wide open, and how he's a complete wide receiver. He wins contested balls, he wins underneath, over top, intermediate. He is literally unstoppable. Every team has to double him, and that's why he's the best wide receiver, because he's the most dangerous wide receiver. My number two All-Pro wide receiver for 2020 is Davante Adams. Davante Adams is who many may consider the best wide receiver in football, and that's because of his stats this year. And I agree, his stats off the charts this year, production incredible. His relationship with Aaron Rodgers really stands out to me as the best relationship from quarterback to wide receiver in the league. They are always on the same page every third down, every red zone opportunity. It's like the football's in a perfect spot. Adams contorts his body and maneuvers his body in a way that always finds the football. He's great at the catch point. He's great off the line of scrimmage. His releases are the best in the game, the smoothest in the game, the sexiest in the game. Davante Adams has grown as a wide receiver exponentially over the last couple of seasons, and I think he's only getting better, hitting his prime right now. He is probably the second best receiver, in my opinion, in football, and deserves to be on the All-Pro team. The number three All-Pro wide receiver on the Bottom Line View All-Pro team is Stefon Diggs. If there was one offseason move that made the biggest impact outside of Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay, it was Stefon Diggs to Buffalo. Nearly enough to get them to a Super Bowl this year, but it was at least enough to make Josh Allen from a pretty good prospect to an MVP candidate quarterback. That is what Stefon Diggs did for Josh Allen. And Stefon Diggs showed what he could do in a primary passing offense, getting away from Minnesota, where they loved to run the ball, they loved to run the rock, and they weren't able to use Stefon Diggs to his greatness and to his true potential. Diggs showed us this year that he is an elite, top of the league wide receiver with what he can do in all aspects of the game. And that's truly what I love about Diggs. He has no single weakness. He has the speed, he has the quickness, he has the route running, he has the hands, and the guy was reliable each and every game in the big spots for Josh Allen. So he is certainly one of the three best receivers in football and deserves an All-Pro vote. The tight end for the 2020 Bottom Line View All-Pro team, it's pretty clear and obvious. It's Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce had one of the historic tight end seasons in NFL history. He showed out. He had just week after week after week, a mismatch nightmare for opposing defenses, coming through in the clutch consistently with big plays on third down, scoring touchdowns, just racking up 10 receptions like it's his day job, which it is. And overall, Travis Kelce is just a phenomenal player, one of the greatest receivers we've seen at the tight end position, and one of the best overall intermediate and short threats in the league, period, at any position. Travis Kelce is phenomenal and maybe had his best season he's ever had in 2020. Moving to the offensive line, starting off at left tackle. This is where things get a little interesting. David Bakhtiari is my choice for the 2020 left tackle. And the reason is David Bakhtiari protected the MVP of football, Aaron Rodgers, did not give up a sack, and was rated across the board just phenomenally as a pass blocker, which in my opinion, the best in football in that regard, but also as a run blocker where he hasn't been as great in the past, but I feel like he upped his game in that area of football this year for the Packers, opening up lanes for guys like Aaron Jones to run that rock. David Bakhtiari has been a steady, awesome left tackle for the Packers, a franchise left tackle. He's been so big for the success of Aaron Rodgers and literally kept that guy clean all year long. That's why he's my all-pro at the left tackle position. At the left guard position, Quinton Nelson of the Indianapolis Colts. Nelson has lived up to his expectation and more since coming out of college, with a phenomenal year last year and another great year this year. Not as much hype, not as much highlights, not as much people talking about him this year, but he still had a really good year. He's one of the few guards that ranked with an 80 grade as a pass blocker and an 80 grade as a run blocker for PFF at the guard position. And that's just speaks to Quinton Nelson. He has no flaws at the guard position. He's powerful, he's smart, he's quick, he's obviously a just beast. And Quinton Nelson is probably the most physically imposing offensive lineman in football today. At the center position, we have two Green Bay Packers on the All-Pro offensive line. Corey Linsley of the Packers, graded as the best center in football by a substantial margin, to the point where you can't even argue for another center to take this spot. Linsley was absolutely spotless, phenomenal, unbelievable in pass protection this year. The Packers never had an issue with interior pressure basically all year long, and he was the reason why. What he does for this team to keep the continuity, what he does from a leadership perspective as well as a performance perspective, what he does from a run blocking perspective as well as a pass blocking perspective. Corey Linsley right now is clearly the best it gets at center, and he's on the All-Pro team. Moving over to the right guard position. Right guard was a lot more difficult than left guard. Left guard, Quinton Nelson stands out, but the problem is with right guard, there were a lot more left guards that I felt played better than a lot of the right guards in the league. But regardless, this guy deserves to get the accolade because he's been so good for so long and so under the radar for so long that he deserves his props. I'm talking about Brandon Scherff of the Washington football team. Washington wasn't a very good team this year. They did end up making the playoffs, and a big reason was because Brandon Scherff on that offensive line, protecting his quarterback, but as well, what he does for that running game. He's one of the best run blockers at the guard position. He's tough. He brings a mentality to this offense, a leadership to this offense, with constant quarterbacks coming in and out. The reliable force on this offense for the past few seasons, the best player on this offense for the last few seasons, has been Brandon Scherff, and what he can do at that right guard position. He's as good as it gets, and to me, he stands out as the most well-rounded right guard in football today. And the last spot on the offensive line goes to the right tackle position. This one was interesting, and this might be a little hot takey. I'm going with Tristan Wirfs of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I truly felt like I wanted to get one of Ali Marpet or Tristan Wirfs on this offensive line because of what they've done to protect Tom Brady this year. Just phenomenal. The main point I can make for a Tampa Bay offensive lineman is how long they have to hold on to the football on some of these plays for Brady because of Bruce Arians' offense. Now, Brady has figured out a way to release the football at a much quicker rate as the season has worn on, But Tristan Wirfs is truly on an island a lot of the time versus the game's best pass rushers. You just look at playing the Saints 3 times this year and what he's been able to do versus a guy like Cameron Jordan. That stands out. He's played a very difficult schedule versus the best pass rushers as a rookie. He's only allowed 1 sack all year and has still managed to be one of the best run blockers at right tackle as well. His athleticism is off the charts, which allows him to be powerful with the guy, match quickness and the feet of a guy, and it just feels like Wirfs has all the answers at such a young age. He's so composed for such a young player. In just his first season as a tackle, it's incredibly difficult to do, especially with no offseason. So all of those factors, it has to go to Tristan Wirfs. Ryan Ramczyk was close, but I just feel like the level of difficulty of what Tristan had to deal with is why I'm going with him at right tackle. Now, switching to the defensive side of the football, my first pick at the edge position is maybe the defensive player of the year, TJ Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers. TJ Watt maybe doesn't get enough credit as he should because he is a Watt and he's kind of still living in the shadow of JJ Watt. But TJ Watt is probably the best edge defender in the league, and it's because he's the most versatile edge defender in the league. He can defend the run well, he can of course get after the quarterback, and he can also drop back in coverage. And he doesn't have the same amount of opportunity as some of these great edge rushers because sometimes he does drop back into coverage and make plays that way. So he's not racking up the sacks, even though he did this year, the same way that some of these other guys do because they have more opportunities. It's as simple as that. But TJ Watt doesn't have a flaw. He plays with incredible passion, feistiness, edge, but he also combines that with great athleticism, quickness, power, the ability to go from quickness, speed, and power. And just overall, the guy has been off the charts amazing the last 2 years, and I see him only getting better. Moving to the inside for my first interior defensive lineman, let's just get this out of the way. Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald might be the best player in football, and he also might be the defensive player of the year. If it's not TJ Watt, it's probably Aaron Donald. Pick between one of the two. To me, Aaron Donald is just a destroyer. He is literally like the Hulk plays football. He had more pressures than anyone once again. He was up there in sacks, up there in tackles for loss, up there in just overall disruption. He gets double teams, triple teams. The offense knows that Aaron Donald is playing, and he still just absolutely bullies people in a way that I've seen from very few defenders. Aaron Donald belongs in the conversation as one of the best defensive players of all time, not just today. The second interior defensive lineman on my all-pro team, this was tough. This was a tough decision between two players. The first one was DeForest Buckner, and I didn't go with him. Sorry, Colts fans. He was really close, but I ultimately went with Chris Jones. Chris Jones to me is the second best interior defensive lineman, and it's mostly because of what he does as a pass rusher. I think he's clearly the second best pass rusher at his position and the second best disruptor because of that. I think he has, besides Aaron Donald, the best ability to take over a game from that position. And the Chiefs are a great team. Jones doesn't get enough credit because everyone gives the credit to the offense. But without this guy, this team isn't in the Super Bowl, period. He is that good. The second edge defender on the All-Pro BLV defense is Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett, to me, was actually an obvious choice here. I feel he's one of the more raw, excellent edge rushers in the league when it comes to pass rushing. He's tuned up his game, he's gotten more refined, but Myles Garrett is still probably the freakiest athlete at this position there is, and he shows it each and every week with what he can do as a pass rusher, how he can bull rush people, overpower people, and simply take over a game with multiple sacks. He also had great consistency this year when in years past he maybe feasted on the weak. This year, his sacks were more kind of spread out. His pressure, his dominance was spread out across the season. I think collectively, this was probably his best year I've seen from Myles Garrett. Let's move to the second level, to the linebackers. I have two for you. Let's kick it off with Fred Warner of the San Francisco 49ers. Fred Warner, to me, is clearly, without a shadow of a doubt, the best coverage linebacker in the league, and it's not even close. Like, it's not even particularly a conversation. What Fred Warner can do in both zone coverage, zone match coverage, and man coverage, and then his instincts combined with just his overall football intelligence and knack for the game itself is just, it's something that not a lot of people and players just have. I'll just tell you this. I've seen this guy cover slot receivers by himself. That's how good he is. And shut them down. Like, not ask for help. Not allow catches versus wide receivers. I don't know another linebacker that can do that. And that's why he is on my all-pro team. He might not be the all the way around most best all-around linebacker, but his coverage and his intelligence is great. And that's why he's on my all-pro team. My second all-pro linebacker for 2020 is Darius Leonard of the Indianapolis Colts. The biggest thing I can say about Darius Leonard is he plays with a tenacity and a viciousness that few players play with at his size. He's actually an undersized linebacker, but he still hits hard, like he's 235, 240 pounds. He's kind of undersized, but it doesn't really matter. He's undersized because he needs to run, he needs to cover, he needs to make up a lot of space in this defense and in the scheme. He's asked to do a lot. He's asked to cover a lot. He's asked to play the run. He's asked to blitz. He's asked to do everything, and that's why he's an all-pro. Because without him, this team is clearly not the same. Their defense is not the same. And that's why you could argue Leonard might be the best linebacker in the game, because he's great at everything, but he's maybe the most valuable too. Out of the secondary, starting off with the safety position. At the strong safety position, I'm going with Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger from the Kansas City Chiefs. The reason I go with Honey Badger here is two things: his incredible playmaking ability and overall football intelligence, and then his leadership and overall sense to raise the level of everyone around him on a defense. There are not many defensive players right now that have that capability like Tyrann Mathieu. He's one of the few. And you combine that with his incredible playmaking, and that's what makes him probably the best strong safety in the league, along with the fact that he's also really versatile. My free safety might be slightly shocking to some of you out there. I'm going with Jessie Bates of the Cincinnati Bengals. When I saw this guy in week 1, I was like, who is this guy? And I knew who Jessie Bates was because he's been around the NFL. He's played for the Bengals for a couple seasons now. And I knew who he was, and I knew he was kind of good. But I saw this guy flying around the friggin' football field, just smacking dudes and making plays on the football. And I was like, where did this guy come from? This looks like an elite safety. And he was. He was the #1 graded safety from PFF in 2020. He played just his ability, his speed across the field to be able to make up so much space and so much ground in so little time is probably the reason he might be the best free safety in the entire NFL right now. The guy is that good, and I think he deserves more acclaim, so I'm putting him on my 2020 BLV All-Pro team. Let's move to the cornerback position. This one was interesting. I feel like there's like 5 or 6 corners that you could argue should be an All-Pro this year, but there is one that certainly stands out above the rest, and that is Jalen Ramsey. I feel Jalen Ramsey right now, 2020 established him as the best corner in football, taking the mantle of Stephon Gilmore. Jalen Ramsey, you could argue, outside of Aaron Donald and TJ Watt, that is the next guy in line for Defensive Player of the Year honors because of how he's changed the Rams defense, the versatility he has, the energy he plays with, which then helps the rest of the defense play at his level of energy, play with his level of intensity. Jalen Ramsey does not have a flaw in his game. I've said that a lot in this video, but I truly believe it with Jalen Ramsey. He is smart. He is a great trash talker. he gets in the head of wide receivers, which is a skill. I'm telling you, it's a skill. He's physical. He's big. He's long. He's fast. He can cover speed receivers, big receivers, quick receivers. He could play in the slot. He could play outside. He could tackle. He could hit hard. Jalen Ramsey is an excellent football player, the best corner in the league. Arguably the second best corner in all of football this season was Jaire Alexander of the Green Bay Packers. Alexander is one of those few corners that can play zone well, man well, lock you down one-on-one, inside, outside, or wherever. Jaire Alexander is one of my favorite corners in the league. He combines excellent ability to play the ball in the air as well as just straight up man-to-man skills to lock you down. Those are my type of corners. Alexander has speed to play with fast guys. He has height to play with tall guys. Alexander put himself big time on the map as an elite corner. He went from a very good corner last year to he's here. He's top 3, and to me, he's number 2. Cornerback number 3 for the BLV All-Pro team is Miami Dolphin Xavien Howard. I nearly went with Marlon Humphrey of Baltimore, but the reason I went with Howard is because I feel like what he does for his defense is just slightly more valuable. Slightly. I love Marlon Humphrey. I think there's few guys that can do what Marlon Humphrey does and the versatility that he possesses and the plays he makes, especially the forced fumbles. But with Howard, he made more interceptions than anybody, so he made those plays. And he was like that number 1/number 2 corner on a given week. Sometimes it was Byron Jones, but he would shut down a lot of number 1 receivers. They played a lot of man-to-man. They asked those corners to play a lot of man and lock down those guys. What I like about Howard is he's very physical at the line of scrimmage. He gets in a wide receiver's face, and that way it allows him to make plays and allows him to win that matchup on the outside. He's not as good as the top 2 in my opinion, but to me, what he did with his interceptions, the amount of plays he made this year, is why I lean towards him as the final cornerback spot on my All-Pro team. Lastly, the special teams for the BLV All-Pro team. Let's start off with the kicker, Jason Sanders of the Miami Dolphins. I went with another Dolphin here. Miami had an incredible special teams. I feel like a large reason they were so good this year was not just because of their defense, but their special teams. Also, Sanders was incredible from 50 and above, nearly hitting all of his kicks in that range, nearly hitting all of his kicks in general. He was Mr. Consistent for a team that really needed him to be that consistent, and he was there for him. My choice for the BLV All-Pro punter this year is Jake Bailey of the Patriots. The Patriots had a punt this year a lot more than they're used to, and Bailey rose to the occasion, punting regularly inside an opponent's 20-yard line, regularly pinning them deep, and regularly just making phenomenal plays and setting up his team with good field position. Bailey is one of the young, excellent punters in this league that I feel is going to be good for a very long time. And finally, my returner, for many of you, the one that you have been waiting for, Gunnar Olszewski is my pick for the BLV All-Pro team. Some of you may take this as a joke. I'm dead serious. Gunnar Olszewski was far and away the best punt returner this year in football. It's actually not close. He had multiple huge returns this year for touchdowns. He had game-breaking, game-winning plays for his team, and his average on his returns were like way better than the second place guy. So as good as some other guys are in kick returning, Gunnar is the guy that probably made the most of his opportunity and set his team up the best this year for success, along with making big plays of his own. So Gunnar is the man I choose for the returner. That is my 2020 NFL All-Pro team. Let me know yours in the comment section below, and let me know any questions or comments you have about my team. There it is, guys. Thanks for watching. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to Gronk spike that like button and subscribe to the channel for more NFL. Peace.